then you will start getting all of our alerts on your phone, traffic, road closures, floods, anything like that. You'll receive those notifications in text form. Next is,
Are we still on citizens' comments?
I'm sorry,
Are we still on citizens' comments?
we are.
Okay, we have Judy with a hand up.
Oh. Hi, Judy.
You guys are always so happy to see me. Can you hear me?
We do.
Okay, so I'm here just to say thank you. Thank you to everybody that was involved in procuring the $50,000 urban and community police grant. DPW, planning and zoning, the tree committee, for planting the seed. No pun intended. And now it's.
We don't have a signature on this, do we?
And again, there's no pun
Oh, there it is.
intended. I am hoping that individuals from these three entities, planning and zoning, DPW, and tree committee, each with an incredible area of expertise, can work together to improve Middlebury's urban safety. I think this is like a phenomenal opportunity to do that, and I hope it comes to fruition. Thanks so much.
Okay.
I'm gonna be busy over here. Just give me a moment.
Okay. I guess, thanks, Judy.
Jeez.
Next, we're going to Public Health and Safety Committee, and we got Chief Covey and Chair Summerly to start the report, I guess.
The chief has got quite a few backups here.
He's got some
Are
pretty
we in
good.
trouble tonight, or? So is the town safe with everybody here?
I make no guarantees.
Yes.
That's the most I've seen in a spot, one spot in a long time.
Yeah, so the committee met in January. We are scheduled to meet quarterly, so we'll next meet on April 22nd, and we've put together a really good committee, as you can see, with representatives from the college, Porter, and MREMS, and ourselves. So one of the main agenda items we talked about was the use of drones. We're going to talk about that in a minute, and a couple of other things. So we looked at downtown safety, which we know we're continuing to monitor, some future agenda items, for that next meeting or a meeting after that. And I'll get back to that after we talk about the drones. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason and his backup, to present the documentation and assure you that this has been very well vetted, and we hope that we are able to answer any questions you may still have about the use of drones, the potential use of drones. Jason.
Thank you. So I'm not asking for any money. Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
In the interest of transparency, knowing that drones can be controversial, had the idea pitched to me, Officer Jones, who's here tonight, did all the research. You have a copy of the proposal he wrote, submitted to me. This is nothing new in law enforcement. It's nothing new to us. But we're at the point where we would like to have our own drone program. Police drones have been flying in Middlebury for several years. We've used drones that other agencies have brought just in the past year on several occasions. Missing persons cases and the shooter outside the police department. Drone was used tactically in that case. So we're at the point where it would make more sense for us to have the technology available immediately. The drones are not readily available from other agencies at times, so we are looking to add this to our existing tool belt. To the point that we did this policy development. You have a copy of our proposed policy. Everything we do is guided by policy. You have a copy of Officer Jones' Rationale, his research on this, as well as some case examples, Middlebury case examples where we either did use police drones from other agencies or where we would have used them. So basically all I'm looking for is just your support for the idea. Like I said, they're already flying here. They can continue to fly here. We could have one fly here tonight. If the right case presents itself, we will request one from another agency. But I would rather have the technology readily available more quickly because time is of the essence. Our primary use of them would be for missing people. Unfortunately, we've had several of those in the past year, one of which turned out very tragically. A drone was used in that case, but not until the next day. Again, it's not always available on the spot for us. I would like to remedy that, and this would allow us to do that. As you see, if you review those documents, use of a drone by the police is very restricted. As a matter of fact, it's restricted by state statute that law enforcement use of drones is very, very carefully controlled. So it's not about us doing surveillance on citizens. It's not that. We have very strict criteria by which we use them. But again, our primary use is going to be search and rescue. We will use them for other things. With all the storms we've had recently, I can see us assisting DPW to do some damage assessments, things like that. Documenting crime scenes, documenting crash scenes. Just the uses are just, there's so many ubiquitous uses. Back in the day, sometimes we need to use helicopters or fixed wing aircraft for this. That's a lot more expensive and not as easily brought to bear. We don't have a fleet of either in our garage. So this technology, it's time. It really is.
Word thoughts, questions?
I have some questions.
Sure.
So currently you said this is already here. You would just have to request it.
Mhm.
Having it here would make that faster. Would officers have to be specially trained for
Yep.
this?
So in order, this is not recreational use. So you have to be FAA licensed. We have 2 officers that have completed that training already. Officer Jones has also. So I didn't address this. Have personal use drones, limited capacity. They're not the drones that we ideally like. But to get started with this program, Officer Jones has it. It's in that orange box back there. So I'm sure he could do a demo flight if you really want around the room. But so he is already FAA. He just completed his training. A second officer did.
Mhm.
Yes, that would be required. That is required by the FAA to use it for this purpose.
And are there protocols around putting it in use in the moment? I mean,
Yep.
You have
Our
to.
policy dictates when it can be used, very specifically what
Mhm.
it can be used for. And state statute, again, addresses some of that. We have to do annual reports. If law enforcement uses a drone, you have to file annual reports
Okay.
on how you used it, how you pay for it.
Mhm.
Very, very transparent process
Okay.
that we cannot weaponize them.
Mhm.
And if you read through our policy, we take it a little further than the statute requires. No high-powered listening devices. We're not using them to spy on people.
Mhm.
That's the idea. Try to put
Right.
people's minds at rest. This
Mhm.
is another tool
Mhm.
that, again, it's not to violate anybody's rights. To the point, if we're documenting, for example, a crash scene, our policy will require us to take the most public route with the drone to avoid flyovers of private property insofar as possible. So there are lots of safeguards built in, and that's why the policy is as lengthy as it is, because we're sensitive to that. We're sensitive to people's fears or misconceptions or just mistrust of police using drones. But that's try to set those fears aside, because we will be very calculated, controlled how we use them, not only by policy but by state statute as well.
I'm assuming, are you regulated more than a private citizen would be in terms of?
There are no state statutes addressing private
I was
citizens.
gonna say,
using them.
somebody could fly into my yard.
And
Watch me
there
throw
are
it out.
FAA regulations.
Right.
So you can't just buy a drone and fly it wherever you want. There are licensing requirements. So this is being used in an official capacity, so therefore it requires licensure. Also to allow us to fly it outside line of sight. It's not very useful to us if we're flying looking for somebody missing in the woods, if we have to have the drone in sight the whole time.
Right,
We're going to
right.
be flying So hence why the financial request will come at a later time. The drone that Officer Jones has some more limited capacity. We want specifically infrared imaging, and we want longer fly time and or weather flying.
And anything that any use, would all of that be recorded?
So that's also covered by statute. What we do so this is the only time I've ever even seen this drone specifically. If we have to apply, if we're doing this in a criminal case, we have to apply in advance for a search warrant from a judge, just like we do when we search anything. And what we call exigent circumstances, for example, the shooter we had outside the police department needed it right away. There wasn't time to apply to a judge for a search warrant. This is the only place I'm aware of ever where we apply for a search warrant after the fact. The statute requires us to do that. And if the judge denies the warrant, then anything we gathered must be destroyed.
Okay.
So yes, there are again safeguards in place for all of these scenarios.
Okay. Thank you.
Those were good questions, Lindsay.
Any other questions or comments?
I think this is a great idea. I'm sitting on the committee. I've heard the full presentation and read all the material. I just think it's a necessary tool for the police department.
We've been using them in agriculture for years already, and they're pretty well developed. And to have a tool like this, especially when you talk about for search and rescue, and not to use that tool, seems like we're leaving something out.
And we discussed the fire department having this available if they need it.
Oh,
and
certainly.
other
We would,
cross-department use.
yes, because our operators will be trained. They will be very familiar with the statute, with our policy, what we can do, what we can't do, and of course we would be available to assist. Like I said, with DPW as well. I can, unfortunately, in the past year,
Sure.
missing person cases, tactical scenarios, and storm damage, we would have had a lot of use for our own drone in the past 12 months.
It's
I
tough
won't
to
ask about
argue with
cost
that.
yet.
Not as bad as you might think.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Yeah, it's in the bank. About $13,000.
Oh, okay. I was guessing 20. So see, it is not as bad as I thought.
Did you want to say that, Dan?
I think in the package it said it was about $13,000 for the drone.
16?
The large, yeah, in that ballpark
I missed
for
the
what we're looking for here.
Screw them up all the time.
I mean, there are lesser versions, but again, you get what you pay for. That increased flight time, weather capabilities, bad weather capability flight is really important to us.
If there's no other questions, then I would look for, and I don't see any hands up in the audience. Pleasure of the board on this one. Anybody care to make a recommendation? Motion.
I move to authorize the Middlebury Police Department to proceed with the development of a UAS program, including any grant applications toward the purchase of a UAS drone and related equipment.
Second.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Looks unanimous.
Thank you.
All right.
And so before we leave you, because we serve you, are there any future agenda items that you would like to see us look at? Demetria from the college recommended that we look at a shelter-in-place policy, like when we would do that, or just have some more vetting of that. And that's a potential future agenda item. You can think about it, and if you do have any agenda items that you want us to be looking at, send them my way. We will add that.
Okay, did you have some updates on some other stuff that came out in that? Did you want
wanna
to talk about the
downtown?
traffic comment or?
And traffic calming?
The traffic calming, specifically Rogers Road conversation, DPW has agreed to look into temporary speed bumps that they're going to try in that area to mitigate some of the residents' concerns. And that was, DPW was happy to do that, feels they're relatively inexpensive. So
Those are the 3-season ones that can come up in winter.
Mhm. That's in addition to the sign that was placed at the corner
Yep.
to help mitigate traffic.
and we will do a new traffic study before the end of the school year when the weather improves. We've already committed to doing that over there. There was one done last year, but we're going to do an additional one. Just to get an idea for what's going on over there.
Yeah.
So we're continuing to respond to traffic calming requests. And as far as downtown safety goes, I think you know that we've been considering how to handle the removal of abandoned property, and we have to be careful about that. And we were able to address that with the tents successfully, so I think that turned out to be a very good process. We also have abandoned cars, abandoned bicycles, abandoned property. So it's just something that the committee is continuing to look at in terms of reviewing our policy related to those things so that we do have good policy and we update it if we need to.
This is kind of a small thing, but if you would consider putting lighting in the pavilion, I think that would be very helpful for when the teen center gets out this time of year and it's very dark. Because we do have, it is a gathering place and it's very hard to see when kids are walking. And a lot of them are walking home, so they're walking all the way out Mary Hogan, which is abandoned, and then
Yeah, it's really dark over
It's
there.
very
So
dark.
I think that's a really good item, Lindsay. So that's something.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Something props up, we'll pass that on.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Chief, I think we've
I
got
think I'm
one
next.
more thing for you here.
Okay.
The sole source procurement request.
Yes, this is for the upfitting of the cruiser we just ordered in December for Yipe Stripes and for the purchase of the radio. The radios, 2 radios for inside the cruiser. This actually may be one. I'm sorry, one. So Yipe Stripes has been our longtime vendor. This is a more involved process than I think a lot of people would give it credit for. The upfitting process, we've had some very bad experiences in the past. I would like to stay with Yipes. They know our program. But I mean that quite literally. The way the light bars are programmed, everything's programmable. The way we set up the car, that's all different from agency to agency. They've done our graphic design for us. They have all this. So I would just ask that we continue to use Yipes. The importance of doing this now is because, like everything else, ordering is taking a lot longer than anybody anticipated. So the car, we were told hopefully within 120 days, 170 days. And we've had some back ordering of this equipment for the car. So the car is useless. Even if we get the car, if it's not upfitted, it's unusable. So I want to get the process started as quickly as possible. Yipes is really the only game in town close to us. Everything we've used in the past, we've used some more local places, did not go well for us. That's why we transitioned to Yipes a number of years ago. And we have a great working relationship with them.
This is for the light bars and the comms and
The seats,
more than just the seats.
partitions,
Yeah.
and they do all the radio installation, which again is very involved, and everything is custom designed for us. The car is upfitted the way we want our cars set up, and it's really handy. We drop the car off to them, they have it for a period of time, and then we go pick it up. We had looked at another option that was maybe, I think Cambridge maybe. It just wasn't doable for us.
It's what?
Maybe in Cambridge, I think is that right? Or is it Dealey? Might have been Cambridge or Jeffersonville, something like that. Yipes has everything on site, the facility. They do the graphic printing there. It really is a one-stop shop for us.
Questions? Pleasure of the board.
It's not so specific to this one item, but I've noticed that in your town reports. I would just caution the board.
Can you provide your name for the record?
Mike Davis,
Thanks.
in single source purchases. I can tell you from being in the business of bidding that if the purchaser knows there's no one else bidding on the project, they might not sharpen the pencil quite so well. And I'm assuming, just in this case, I'm not picking on the chief because I'm not that stupid. But I'm assuming the car goes to wherever, up to Yike Stripes, and it's left there,
Yep.
and they do their duty.
They do.
So whether it goes to Yike Stripes or somewhere in New Hampshire or somewhere in New York, if there's a significant savings, it may be worthwhile. Now, I saw this budget item, it is not a huge budget item, but I think if someone went back and looked at the town's purchases, there's a pretty high percentage where people come in, departments come in and ask for single source. And over the course of the year, I think you find that this, the money that you might save by making sure there's at least two, and it's preferably three bidders on everything, everyone would be served better. Because if there's just one bidder, I can tell you from experience, the pencil is not sharp. It's pretty dull. That's that.
Yeah, and we did talk about this and
Yeah, this comes up periodically. We have also had the issue happen of going with someone new because the bid is low and then things go awry and it winds up costing us more.
Well, if your spec's written right, that should not be a problem. I just caution you to look at that a little closer.
we hear it. In this particular case, they have done the last several.
Oh, yes.
They've been doing them.
And a night and day difference between our past experiences. Because in the past, we didn't have a single upfitter. We had to use a hodgepodge.
But
Some
somebody
would
doing
do
the
some more,
comms, somebody
some would do
doing-
correct.
yeah,
And
that's-
Department of Public Works would help out putting in, the seats. They have to take out the rear seats, the existing rear seats of the car, put in these transport seats, put in the partition, and then we'd have to get the radio outfitter, none of whom are local, to come and coordinate all of that. And then just the in-car electronics, the in-car video camera system is highly difficult to install correctly. And we were using radio companies that said they could do it, but it turned out they weren't good at it. Yipes does this for lots of police departments, so it's just second hack. This is what they do. And we don't often have to return the car to them because they did something wrong versus our past experiences.
Just so you know, Mike, we've had problems with even getting guys to bid on our police cruisers. So the police car,
There's another, in my opinion, there's another perfect example. It seems to me that the local dealerships are looked at very closely, and and they should be.
well,
There's no reason why you can't buy a car in New York,
I don't know as
South
though,
Carolina, and
Yeah.
anywhere else. They're all gonna perform. You either get a lemon or you don't get a lemon. You can get a lemon from a local dealer. So all I ask is that there's nothing wrong with dealing with Yike Stripes, but just
Yeah.
get two other prices. And Chief, I'm sure you can figure out how to get Yike Stripes bid to work with what other bids you might have gotten.
Sure, and I can speak to that a little bit. We've had some preliminary conversations about the idea of using a fleet supplier. I reached out to several other police departments in Vermont that do just that. There are fleet suppliers in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rutland City Police Department, for example, uses a fleet supplier, as does Hartford PD. I've spoken to both agencies and find that, so what you do there is you order the car from them. They tell you when the car is done. That's it. And you pick up the call or they deliver to you, however you want to do it. Everything is done by them, the car procurement. And in my initial research is that there could be a fairly substantial cost savings, the purchase price of the car. But again, I have spoken to DPW, Emily Sherrington, a little bit about discussing this with the infrastructure committee. We just haven't done it yet. But I have some numbers from Rutland City, some comparison numbers as to what we paid for this charger, what our bids were in this most recent round versus what they received for pricing. So that is on the horizon. That is a discussion to be had.
good.
Nice.
So back to this one though, we got a car coming in with that we ordered stripped and basically needs to be upfitted. And we got a local supplier, I think, for this particular purposes.
Motion?
The motion will be,
I move to approve the sole source procurement by the police department of vehicle upfitting services from Central Vermont Communications and Yipes Auto and Graphics for a total cost of $22,015.
Second.
moved and seconded. Other comments on questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lindsay, did you?
Oh, aye, sorry.
Vote? Okay.
I had moved on to item 8.
She's going.
Yes.
Hurry here.
Okay. And then it is a high dollar item and our sole source provision is supposed to be, I think, in that $5,000 range is what we were looking at for routine stuff. So we should probably see if we can at least have somebody that they know they're bidding against as a bare minimum. So next, I guess that's done for you, Chief.
Thank you.
We're on to Emily.
Hey there.
Good evening, Emily.
I like the nights where the chief has more on the agenda than I do.
Yeah, but his don't cost as much as yours do.
What's that?
His don't cost as much as yours do.
The first item I have is service line inventory. I've come to both the infrastructure committee and select board discussing this a few times now. I believe, so I think you have most of the backstory, but essentially the state's drinking water, groundwater protection division require all of the public water systems to do lead service line inventory. We've started the process. We have about 20% of our services inventory, which means going into homes and properties, typically into the basement, looking at the material of the lines coming into the house, and also marking out material elsewhere that you might see in the basement. And then if there is galvanized or any evidence of lead, we have to mark that off as a flag for the state. So we have completed about 20% of our efforts, but the due date for this inventory is October, mid-October. So I reached out to Otter Creek to see if they could assist in the process. I've talked to them a few times about it historically, and they've sort of been running a parallel platform as to what we've been doing. I built an app that the inspector can go into the home and just go through the checklist of what they see, and then it immediately generates it to the spreadsheet that I keep as a copy, which is in the same format as what the state needs. So it's a pretty simple process, but it's just time consuming to get into all of these properties. Otter Creek has worked with 3 or 4 municipalities doing it. So they have a pretty good system in place. So I've been working with Robert to try to figure out how much of it we could still tackle, how much they could take on. They are proposing to bring in an intern or 2 this summer that they would loan us for the duration, which would help. And then we could just have a full-time intern working on it for, but Otter Creek would still help with managing it. And so the state has reserved funding for us through state revolving funds, similar to our other planning loans. I forget how they estimate. I think it's about $80 a service was their estimate. Is somewhere in that ballpark. But they tallied up our services and came up with just over $302,000. Around 200 of that would be subsidized and forgiven. So when it's all said and done, if we utilize Otter Creek for the entire study, we'd be looking at a loan amount of about $101,000, 0% interest, 0 administrative fees, and a 5-year prepayment plan. So similar to all of the other SRF funding that we've worked with. So the first step in the process is to get approval for the engineering agreement with Otter Creek from the select board, and then we can submit that to the state to start the actual engineering agreement and the loan agreement process.
Questions of Emily? Or, Heather's not here, but this has gone through the infrastructure committee. I know they talked about this.
We've been working on it
Infrastructure.
before.
Yeah, so any comments on it from the committee?
This sounds like the cost-effective way of doing this inventory. Once the inventory is done, I assume we'll need to replace these leaded surfaces at some point.
Yeah, so the town does not technically own the service.
Huh.
The individual own, so we own to the curb stop.
Okay.
And this is really like looking from the curb stop to the house, into the house where the resident or property owner still owns. The only thing we own in the house is the meter and the endpoint that reads the data. But they own that actual service line. And so I don't know that this is one way that the plan records how they are proposing to address that. Because
Gotcha.
I know that a lot of municipalities will struggle with paying for replacement of services that they don't own. That said,
Yeah.
we have about 500 of these completed. Scrolling through, I saw 6. I think that were actual. I think only 1 or 2 were actual lead, the other were galvanized. So the number of them is very minimal, and I think I think lead went out of production before this in the 80s, and so any developments that were built after that, that's a pretty low hanging fruit that they're not going to have lead in that service line. But some of our older developments would be potentially compromised.
I assume that all the solder in the plumbing in my house is leaded, since it was put in before the 80s and lead solder was common, copper
Yeah,
plumbing.
they make a little test kit.
Yeah,
so
you
can
can
get
have it on
hardware
there.
store when we go to
It's
do
like
your
$6.
Yeah.
for your endpoint if we haven't already.
Okay.
Bring those with us, but you just swipe, and if it changes colors,
Yeah.
you're one of the chosen ones.
Oh, nice.
So
Well,
that-
you're not doing so well on
Yeah.
trivia anymore.
I don't
Exactly.
think that's necessarily true. They just,
Your brain seems
They
fine
did.
so far.
they weren't all,
Huh?
before the 80s, before the 80s, they were using copper. They weren't using lead in lots of places.
No.
Well, he's
the
talking about the
solder.
Okay, oh,
solder,
Oh,
not
you're
the
just talking
pipe.
solder. Got it.
Yeah.
Not the pipe.
Well, and if you let your water run,
Right. Exactly. That's what we do.
And I think the law didn't go into effect
Yeah.
until,
Got it.
it was either it was 86 or 89. It was much later than I thought
Yeah.
originally.
Yeah.
So people were trending in the right direction, but it wasn't the requirement.
Care to make a motion?
Sure. I move the select board approve the engineering agreement with Otter Creek Engineering at the cost of $302,273 to assist the town in completing the lead service line inventory.
sorry.
Moved and seconded by Lindsay?
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Sound the unanimous. On the bus, or the truck bids rather.
Truck bid. So this was Bill's wheelhouse. He put out 2 different applications, one for a class 3 truck and then one for a class 6 truck, and did not receive a lot of input from vendors. The truck 3 bid came back extremely over what we had budgeted, so we have built into the FY25 additional funding to be able to supplement that. But the Class 6 truck, which is one of our highway plow trucks, that one came in, it was pretty close to what we had estimated it to be at. We did not receive, I think he contacted 3 different vendors. 2 of them submitted, but only one submitted the actual body build quote component of it. So it is a little bit higher than what I believe we had previously budgeted, 228,000. We had to switch. He had originally requested for truck number 358 to be swapped out based on the 7-year cycle of these. But we've had a lot of issues with an alternate truck, so we were going to look for replacing 358 next year so that we could get rid of 327 sooner. And the build out on these is 18 to 24 months. So really, we're seeking approval now, but you don't actually pay until you receive them. And we need to get these trucks in the queue for build.
18 to 24 months.
Right.
They'll lock the price based upon the current bid, though?
Correct. And just to speak to what Jason brought up earlier with buying fleet vehicles, Jason and Chief had gone back and forth on looking into that option for these vehicles as well. And I think it is a direction that we should consider, but the one component that didn't change, the cost might come down, but that 18 to 24 month period was not changing from what he was finding with other municipalities using that system, unfortunately.
Wow.
So I think it's hard to get rid of that. We might be able to improve the cost.
In your experience, did the lead time change since 2020? Or has it always been year and a half plus
It has
to
not,
get a big vehicle?
it doesn't seem like it's come back down.
Okay, so it was supply chain kick and just hasn't returned.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at the job, I think it's just hard. These places are struggling to employ people.
Sure.
There's just so many issues on the labor side of it, so.
Okay, questions? So they're looking for the Class 6 to replace the one that was due out in 25.
Sure. I'll move the select board approve the purchase of the Class 6 tandem Freightliner truck with the Viking sieves, body build for $257,910.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Cool.
Any opposed? Okay. The trade-in isn't worth much, huh?
Well,
The trade-in isn't worth much, but Bill thinks we can get more for it if he just sells it outright. So that was also going to, he thought he'd be able to offset that cost a little bit.
What is the trade-in on?
they were offering 15. Thinks he can get 50.
50?
Stormwater feasibility?
Stormwater feasibility, so part of the grant funding that we received for the feasibility study that Aldrich and Elliott is conducting for us is to have a community public outreach meeting early in the process, and then we'll have a subsequent one as we develop it further along. So we had our first meeting at the infrastructure committee last week. Aldrich and Elliott came down to present the work that they've done so far. Essentially, we're looking at 3 different stormwater permits throughout town with this this funding, one being Adams Acres, which they'll develop to a 30% conceptual level. And then the Shaw Supermarket stormwater permit, which we're a co-permittee on with the supermarket. That one is also proposed to develop out to a 30% level. And then I had asked them to do, prior to the flooding, perform a hydraulic and hydrologic analysis for the area associated with the Buttle Acres development, which ironically got hit pretty hard this summer, as we all know, in the storm. So it'll help sort of capture that area a little bit and start being able to develop some solutions for those neighborhoods.
I thought the drone topography that they did with the 1 foot lines on it was really awesome.
I was out there the day they were flying that, and it was literally a 5-minute flight to get all of the data that they
Really
were
cool.
able to capture.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like
stuff.
setting it up took longer than flying it, but the amount of the data that they can get, it has to be the right landscape for it to be effective, but it was right there.
It's actually a question that would be interesting if you can also put some of your programs onto that same drone that would be utilized by or controlled by the police station, if we could even use it.
It would be really useful.
It'll be flying 24/7 before we know it.
Well, doesn't take a long flight. It can suck in a lot of data.
Yeah.
How about on the town water system update?
Town water, so just a general update, we experienced a surge at the end of January now that sort of started this whole conundrum that we're still in, but a surge, we think the root cause was that a hydrant had been incorrectly closed, and so it allowed flow into the hydrant. Hydrant froze when we had that extreme cold snap, and then a subsequent thaw caused it to essentially explode, and in the process caused a surge of pressure throughout the system. We reached out to DeFray Group, who's doing the water tank design and did the hydraulic modeling for the town, and they calculated it to potentially be a surge of 200 to 440 psi above standard conditions. And so the cause of what we're feeling now with water breaks started with that. And essentially that surge just ricocheted throughout the system. And any weak spot that we have in our system felt it and is now starting to surface. So locations that we knew we had universal pipe and it's been, we've been managing it. We have projects slated in the neighborhood in the future, or South Street, for example. We're in the process of replacing that pipe. And that was one of the weak points that reared its head 2 weekends ago. So the water department has been working extremely hard, understaffed and extremely hard. And just trying to chase it. They have 2 shutdowns coming up tomorrow and Thursday to replace 5 valves, sort of in the Katy Road lane, that Katy Road from Route 7 back over to K Street. A lot there. We had 4 or 5 valves that were all impacted by this, which then also, when we had water breaks, those valves weren't operational, so the isolation area got bigger and bigger because the valves have been impacted also. So hopefully we're coming to the tail end. We still have, including those valves, we still have 2 other breaks that we're aware of that we haven't repaired yet. One of them being in the main line that goes from Palmer Springs Well up to Quarry Road. So extremely difficult to locate. We had considered using a drone to help locate it. I think Vermont Rural Water came out and helped, and also Jason LaRock from Otter Creek were both extremely helpful in trying to find it in the immediate. And so I think we have the one on that line isolated, but it is in 5 feet of standing water.
Yes.
So replacement is going to be extremely difficult.
Mike,
That said, that line is also under a lot of pressure, so we could potentially do something on the surface, and it would be extremely unlikely that it would freeze due to the amount of pressure that's under. So I think we have to, once we actually locate it and can isolate it a little bit better, we can start solving the problems, but until we get there, we don't know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog is tired.
Mike,
So I don't understand. So was this a mechanical problem that started, or was it, what created that? Was it a water surge or air surge?
I think it was a water surge essentially, as the freeze released from the hydrant, a water surge went through the system, and that created an opening for the water to.
But something happened before the hydrant, you said. I'm just wondering what that was. In other words,
What's that?
have we had this happen before, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. Has it happened in Middlebury before where we get this surge, and I guess I don't remember it. I'm just wondering if.
No, I mean, we've had issues where sometimes much smaller surges where you get a knock or something like that. Nothing to this degree.
Is it air or water that's creating the surge you're talking about? Is it air or water?
It was this one hydrant that was improperly sealed. Is what created it.
So it's water, not air.
Yes. The water froze in the hydrant and then it finally released and then a surge of water came behind it. Because that hydrant was not correctly sealed.
I guess what I'm concerned about is that this doesn't happen again, and so what are we doing to prevent this, whatever created the surge, that doesn't happen again?
I agree 100%. I think part of the concern is that other parties have access to our infrastructure. And we can't block hydrants. Like the fire department needs a hydrant to be available and active should they need it. So I think we definitely need to do a review of how we can make it as safe as possible, and maybe it's a annual meeting with contractors that are working in town. Sometimes paving companies or a company like that might use a hydrant to fill up equipment. So I think the conversation needs to go to a lot of different platforms to make sure everybody understands potential repercussions and how to safely use them. And they need to have permission to use them.
Yeah, something needs to be done, Emily, and again, your department's working as hard as they can, I understand that. But I certainly do not like boiling water. It was kind of quaint for the first 4 or 5 hours, but now that it's gone into days, and it sounds to me like it's gonna continue for several days. That was gonna be my next question. How long is this gonna continue? But that, we can't let this happen. If someone's gotta go around and bleed the hydrants every once in a while, when there's not snow on the ground and you're looking for stuff for your guys to do, have them go around and bleed the hydrants.
that's actually something we haven't even gotten to. We just hired.
Was that
somebody.
Pardon?
Brian was saying that the Personnel Committee just approved and we just advertised for additional help on the water department. So part of that person's responsibility was going to be working on the distribution system.
And that was before this happened, because we recognize that we didn't have enough help to get all of this done.
Okay. I know you used to do it.
We
So-
did.
I used to, yes.
You used to get it done, so, but anyway, so my next question is, what about the boiled water? How soon do you think you're gonna we're gonna get out of that?
So the state, can I back up just a minute? Our crew does clean our hydrants twice a year. They do it spring and fall. We think that this issue occurred after they bled the hydrants in October. I forget the date they were on this specific one, but mid-October. And because our crew leaves the valves in a specific way so that they, when they drive by, they can tell if that valve, if that hydrant is leaking, they'll know something like this is going to happen and they can deal with it. So it was not left in the way that the crew had left it when they bled it. So it kind of gives us a time frame of when the damage occurred. And to speak to the testing, the state sets up the parameters for when we're allowed to test. And the last update I heard from them, it was going to be late this week. And that could change. I am hoping that it won't change. I'm hoping that the valve replacements that we're working on will keep that on track.
So bring me up to speed. So we don't test the water, the state tests it?
It's the only lab.
So all of our water, anytime we have a major break like this, the state is involved. We have to file a report with the state for them to sort of give us guidance on how to best address it. And so initially, they said that we could test last week, but then given the lines and where the breaks were, they said that they really wanted to wait until we had more zones fixed and secured. And so that's why they changed it, bumped it a week out.
In your experience, could more testing, in other words, if they're only testing it once in a week, and a positive test may possibly have come 3 days earlier, I mean, is there any way that we can test it more frequently than what the state says they want to send somebody down here or use their lab to do it? I guess, can we put pressure on them to test more frequently? It's a pain in the neck boiling your water.
No, I completely empathize with that. They won't accept our results until it's the test that they've asked for.
We do appreciate everything those guys are doing as part of your team. As you recognize, well, it's frustrating for everybody, but nobody more than you and your team, I'm sure. I assume when you get that test, we'll get the message out through the email and through the new text process so people can, because
Text is
we are getting
still
questions.
coming online, but of course we have Front Porch Forum.
Yeah.
Is there a potable town spigot somewhere where people could get 10, 20 gallons of water?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
people are welcome to come to Civil Little League. You can come to DPW. We might not have water tomorrow because we're part of the shut off. But if you need, and I think Bill did get some drinking water that we have at DPW for people if they need to come pick some up.
Just recognizing it's a huge hassle, of course, but yeah, better than boiling.
Yeah. Been through it for many months, hauling water when our wells went dry, so it's not fun. Okay.
You don't pay a quarterly fee for your well.
No, I got it, Mike. No. We're spending your money wisely.
Oh, I know you are. It seems odd. There seems to be it sounds to me there's only a few players that would get in to the hydrants to get water, i.e. Road painting crews. So I would assume some letters would go out to them or something.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. I think you can get back to your dog.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Thanks, Emily.
for the interruptions.
No interruption. Dana. And Joe. And Chris.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
Kathleen, I wonder, could we bring up on the screen the design presentation boards?
Sure.
I'm not going to go through all the schematic designs because I know we don't have time for that, but I do just want to make sure everyone knows that the presentation boards that were included in your select board packet are the new or the updated final schematic designs. They're different than the ones you've seen before. For anyone here that hasn't seen them yet, they're on the library's website, and we'll have printouts soon. So that's really exciting that we have completed the schematic design, and I'm just really excited to be able to tell you guys that as a professional librarian, this is an amazing plan. This is the library that we want. As a library user whose kids are here all the time, I also am excited to say that this is the library that we want. I'm so excited for getting the kids front and center on the first floor, giving the teens and the middle school students their own space. I love all of the community, the new community spaces that we'll be able to add, and community members will have after hours access. So it's just a fantastic plan. The library staff fully support it. The community has had opportunity for input all throughout the process, and they have given us input, and it is reflected in these updated plans. Historic preservation has been a part of this process since the fall, and they are happy with the direction that the plans have taken and where we've ended up. So I really just, if anyone wants to get together with me and have coffee and talk about the plans in detail, I would love to, because I could talk about them forever. They're wonderful. So I'm couldn't be happier with where we ended with the plans. I'm also really happy to share some exciting news that we have found a temporary location for the library as we look forward to the construction phase. The National Bank of Middlebury has incredibly generously what?
No, I really hadn't heard that before.
Oh, yes, well, it is breaking news.
I sit on the committee is why I was kind of saying that. No.
Yeah, so the National Bank of Middlebury board has generously offered to house library operations in the first floor of the Duclos building at 30 Main Street. It is an awesome space. It's big, open, light-filled. It is not going to take much work at all to make that a fantastic library. Judith has already helped us do a floor plan and a fit test to make sure that it's going to work well from an operation standpoint, and it is. So this is great news, obviously, from a cost savings standpoint, because it is being donated, the space. And it is also great news because we have a plan to continue library operations. So anyone out there that was concerned what is going to happen to the library during construction and relocation, we are working on a really great plan for that. So at the next select board meeting, we'll have a letter of intent for you to take a look at that lays out some of the details of that plan. And yeah, it just is really exciting. I think as word of this project gets out, our community partners are really starting to step up and be interested and want to know what they can do to support us. So I'm very grateful to the bank for offering this. It's huge. So with that, I think we'll move on to the funding plan and the cost estimates. Kathleen, could you bring up the high level summary? And I'll just go through this quickly, but everything all together the current project estimate is a little under $17 million. And I think it's important that everyone knows that that includes contingencies. There's healthy contingencies in there for whatever unknowns we might encounter as we move forward with this process.
Is this the one you're looking for?
Can we do the other one that has less detail? Although Chris is here and can speak to all of the detail, but I was just going to touch on the round numbers because that's I think the easiest way to get the big picture. So coming in at just under 17, including contingencies and including the escalation. So anticipating inflation between now and the start of construction, which would tentatively be in spring of 2025. The project, since it'll have the geothermal, will qualify for a little over $500,000 in federal tax rebates. So that gets the project cost down to 16.4. And we anticipate being able to cover about 8 million of that between grants and gifts combined. So 2 million in state and federal grants, and then a $6 million capital campaign. So that works out to about $8.4 million in public borrowing. 50% of the overall cost we should be able to cover outside of public indebtedness, which I think is wonderful. Let's see, we included the what that would mean for taxpayers on a 30-year bond here, but I also have 20-year bond because I know someone was wondering about that. So $8.5 million in public borrowing for a 20-year bond. A home valued at $300,000 would expect to pay $221 per year. And for a 30-year bond, it would be $185 a year for a $300,000 home. So that is about where we are now. And Chris and Joe, you can jump in if I forgot everything, but that's I think that's the highest level summary, and we're happy to answer questions. And we're really here tonight to say, I hope we can move forward with this plan and this scope and this funding plan and pursue a May 7th bond vote. Chris, Joe?
I'll jump in to say I have really nothing to add. Dana, no, I think Dana really had the snapshot summary. As Dana mentioned, I'm here to answer any other detailed questions that we have on that backup sheet that Kathleen showed us, which has a number of line items on that. And we're excited to have evolved the design accordingly with and updating the cost estimate. As Dana mentioned, with the feedback that we've been receiving really since the last time we met with you all to present the budget.
Just to say, I think that we have had a very thorough, deliberate, and transparent process over the past many months, weeks, years. We've had extensive opportunities for public input, and we will have more as we go ahead. We have a great team, and all of the members of the ILSI 100 project team are here, except for Farhad, who's bailed for Chicago. Many of our current and former library trustees are here, and we're delighted to have other supporters ranging from their 80s to their below their sevens and users and supporters of the library. I think that the need for this project has been well established. We have a great design. We have a great team. I don't know if Judith Harris is on tonight.
Judith is on.
Who's been the town liaison, who has spoken just very, very highly of the collaboration with Weeman Lamphere and with REARC. The process has just been going along beautifully. We have, thanks to Dana's hard work, a tremendous funding plan, I think. So we're ready to go. We would love to have the opportunity to put this before the voters and to educate them about some of the finances and the benefits and so on. And we're delighted too that we have the Energy Committee following us, and we hope they're excited about the possibility of geothermal and mass timber to sequester the carbon. So those are my thoughts.
Questions, comments?
I can make all kinds of great comments, but I sit on the committee. I'm excited for this. I think it was only a month ago that I said, I think we're going to be able to do this. But we've all just had doubts about it. But with this commitment and it looks like it's doable to fund this with other than tax dollars at a 50% level, it's just really, really exciting. it's an incredible, beautiful plan. I keep thinking this is not going to be for my library, but it's for these people out here, their library. And and we've had great leadership, and now we've got Chris in the middle of this. I can't say much. I can't say enough about how the relationship with them has been, and how easy it is, and how responsive they are, and how detailed they are, and how much I think they probably have put in a great more effort than they've been compensated for what they've given us right now. And I could go on, but I think that's probably good enough.
I'm really excited to see the teen room happening. I mean, these guys will get to use it. And for anyone wondering how important that is, the library has recently had multiple events for teens that have had 60 kids show up.
Ooh.
More than one, like not once, like multiple times this has happened. There's a real need, and this is fulfilling a real sort of gap in what is a lovely library. But we are out of space, and I know that that edition specifically will get utilized a lot. So I'm excited we're here. I was on the committee in its very early days, and you had your hopes of how fast things would move, and I was skeptical but enthusiastic, and I'm just floored that it's all come together. And I know that that's the work of a lot of people in this room. So thank you all for your time.
Thoughts on it?
I've been excited the whole time.
You're always excited.
I'm a big fan of the library. Great job, you guys.
Howard.
What's that? Howard.
Just asking a question. The Municipal Energy Resilience Program grant, is that, you didn't assume that in the funding, that potential that if you receive that, that's another $500,000?
So we're applying for $3 million worth of grants, and one of those would be the Municipal Energy Resilience. So we're assuming we're not going to get every grant, but we're hopeful that we will get the MERP. Yeah.
It's very exciting that in a few short years I could be doing the jigsaw competition in a new. Yeah, it's wonderful. Having been on the library board for the inception of this process, it's amazing to see it come to this. It's gorgeous.
So one of the things they're asking us for is approval to go forward with the schematic design and bond vote. As you all know, or many of you do at least, we have to bond for the total amount. So we would be looking for a bond of either 16 and a half, or maybe it's the 17. But the total amount, and then we would commit to the amount. So the voters have to vote on the total amount, and then we would actually take out the amount that we are short on funding the bond for the project. I think it would be a non-starter if we sent it out to the voters at 16 and a half and said, we're just looking for approval of bond for 16 and a half, right?
Casually.
Casually. So I'd like to know what the board feels comfortable at committing to voters, asking voters to approve, so that when the bond goes out and it starts getting written up in the Addison Independent and whatnot, there is an understanding and expectation of what we're actually asking them to approve. When we have done other bonds recently, for instance, the water project, we've told them that we are going to seek approval for a bond of X, but that we're expecting a certain amount of it to be paid back in grants. and that we will not actually do the project until we are sure that we have the grants in hand. I think that's what the board, what the IPL 100 team is asking us, is what would we commit to? Have now proposed that they will commit to $8 million of fundraising, grant and aid, and other asks. Kathleen and I looked at in chatting with part of the team. It was mentioned that we have the Cross Street Bridge Fund, the local option tax, and would we look at utilizing some of that? This year's this year's budget is it 280,000? Somewhere near there in the budget for coming out of the local option tax reserves for library repairs if this does not get approved, because we know we will need to do a number of things. Kathleen looked at the balance in the Cross Street Bridge Fund, the annual earnings of the Cross Street Bridge Fund, projected out over future growth, a very, I would say, conservative growth. She used 2%. But when we're dealing with commitments to taxpayers, we want to take the conservative. I looked at what it has done since historically, and the average growth is about 5% year over year. There's years where it was flatter, and there was years where it was greater. And if you did a 5% growth year over year, it's just about what it's bringing in right now. So I think a fair assumption of what the Cross Street Bridge can be expected to bring in, or the local option tax. If you look then at what we have historically been utilizing the local option tax for, as our bridge payment is going down, we're having more, not only are we getting more local option tax proceeds, but we're also having to pay less because the college's portion of the payment is fixed at $600,000 per year. And so there's more available for the town. We have been using that for infrastructure projects. It allowed us to do some things that we otherwise were not able to do. And we're, matter of fact, asking the voters once again this year to use some of that for the adaptive reuse of the police department. And that is keeping our, even in a year where we're seeing significant inflation, it's keeping our budget relatively level. I think it's a 3.5% increase proposed. So I really feel it's a reasonable request to look at that. In looking at that from my perspective, and I think, I need to get it out to you, but if we utilized what we are already budgeting in this current, or in next FY, it would pay for the coverage of a $4 to $4.5 million bond. And then that drops off for that first year, which is your highest payment.
This is the repair monies that we have contingent on not
Correct.
renovating.
Correct.
Okay.
But you would have to commit to using that year over year.
Yeah.
Which if we utilize that, we could, ask the voters if the voters approved utilizing that,
Mhm.
and with the commitment from the IPL 100 team to come up with $8 million, we would be asking voters for either $4 or $4.5 million, which for a project the size of what we're asking for seems to be putting it into a really doable position for our community. And, I've learned, is this the third highest usage library in the state? Is this correct?
We're in the top 3. There's a lot of ways to measure use, but yeah, we're always in the top 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
So if it's utilized that much by our community and it's a community resource, I think that would get my vote. If everybody could agree to going out to the taxpayers and asking them to vote on it, I think though we need to be clear to what we're asking. So I'm saying that I would support using a portion of the local option tax proceeds. And it is not, when we talk about what we're getting on an annual basis right now, it is, give me 1 minute.
And this is at 2%.
Well,
Yeah,
Is
that's
this-
at 2% growth rate.
FY25,
Okay.
FY25, it is projected to be $1,300,000 local option tax. And we've committed, or we're asking to use 280,000 of that.
Is this something you guys have that we don't?
It is just
you?
we're looking at it.
Okay,
This,
got it.
this is something new that came up yesterday, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know, this is, keep
Yeah.
talking. Just keep talking.
Because, as you know, I've been struggling with asking taxpayers to pay for too much, and we struggle each year, and sometimes good ideas fall out of the sky, so. I think the fear was always that we were going to deplete the Cross Street Bridge Fund, and it's more than a Cross Street Bridge Fund. It is the greater community paying for resources that are in the Shire town.
Yeah.
And it's the only way we have to have the outlying communities help support that. And the reason why it's so large is because all of look at the auto dealers, even have all congregated here in Middlebury, and that 1% adds up.
Sure.
And I've said it since the first day I was on the board that this thought that the local option tax was going away, it's not, because we're very reliant upon it, and it's the fair way, it's the only way that we have to have the greater community support the resources. And then we also bear the burden of having the lion's share of the nonprofits, and so we have a significant portion of our otherwise taxable grand list that is non-taxable. So this is how we get it back. So that's a thought.
I like that balancing. I think that the Cross Street Bridge was essential for moving people in the geometry of this town, and is an enduring reason to implement the options tax, and thinking of it in this way as funding regional services that are hosted, municipally aligned regional services hosted within our town with this funding makes a lot of sense.
And if you look at the 2% growth, 10 years out, we would be looking at $1.6 million in local option tax, and the payment on the $4 million bond would be $240,000. So now you're talking what, one sixth of it, less than 1/6.
Yep.
And at that point, our payment on the Cross Street Bridge debt will be down to $55,000. This year, it's $260,000.
I think it's a good plan. I think this
I-
is from my geniuses.
I think you've just stunned the crowd
Yeah.
because you stunned me. I always come prepared and think I've got it, but you've stunned me. This is fabulous.
Yeah, this is really good.
It's not my idea.
Well, I was giving you credit.
But I wanted to see the numbers, but it was a worthwhile exercise to look at where the Cross Street Bridge Fund, or where the local option tax. I mean, I've been around here long enough that I thought of it as the Cross Street Bridge Fund, but where the local option tax is going and how fast that pot is growing, and where our payments on that Cross Street Bridge are headed. So,
The Cross Street Bridge is going to provide awesome views.
For sure.
only fair that they be linked somehow, right?
I've got one question.
Yes, Mike.
The Cross Street Bridge maintenance is the town's responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So in this fund that we have, there's always gonna be money in there to take care of maintenance.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's one of the first things.
Everything strand in that bridge. So, we've gotta keep the maintenance up on that, or?
Absolutely.
We had Kathleen probably remembers it better than I do, but we asked, when we first started looking at tapping this for something else, Mike, we asked for an analysis in a future estimation of maintenance expenses, and we've been reserving against that. And we're actually significantly ahead of what were requested for reserves.
Okay, just to keep in mind, I mean, we're always hearing about inflation, and construction escalation. So
That's why we're significantly ahead.
Victoria DeWind had her hand up and I promoted her to panelist. Victoria?
Hi, thank you. I think it's exciting that the fund can help with the bond expenses. I'm just wondering, we've used it so often in the past and again this coming year for infrastructure costs and to help alleviate the impacts of those. Will there still be funds available for those in addition to the library and the bridge maintenance? Do you figure, or?
That's a really good question, and exactly why I wanted to look at the numbers, because we have really become reliant upon it for some of our infrastructure improvements. And given where it has grown to, we were able to use $280,000 this year in our proposed budget for projected library repair needs if we didn't go forth with this project. And so The answer to that is yes. It doesn't, it still leaves at least what we've been used to using. And as it grows, we would have access to more, especially as our payment goes down.
So what Brian is outlining is a plan to use the local option tax to pay Cross Street Bridge Fund debt, continue our contribution to the local option tax without touching the Cross Street Bridge Fund, which has at least $2 million in it currently. So that has been set aside and continues to be on reserve.
But we would ask, we would not use it for all of it. We would ask the voters, so for $4 million worth, or 4.5, wherever you want to, however much you feel. And I think we have to define that exactly tonight.
I don't think you have to.
I don't think we have to tonight,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
But that we would get you these to look at, and but in giving them the go-ahead to go forward, they could talk about that concept. Because I'm sure that if we give them the go-ahead to go forward, that John or somebody's going to be writing an article on it.
I hope so.
But before we had the actual bond vote, we would need to go
sure.
know exactly how much. Conceptually, is questions on that?
No.
I mean, we are, sorry, I'm very tired. We are asking the voters for the full amount in,
They have to approve.
right, like
have
I'm
to.
just, yeah,
But we-
okay.
But they have
But,
to be,
and then you will be prepared to talk about, or we will be prepared to talk about how that is not.
And our commitment is that we will not go forward until we have the funds in hand for the amount, the $8 million. And that we would be utilizing, because we would have to have them approve the usage of the local option tax. So it should be part of that vote.
but the only thing we have to do tonight is approve the schematic design.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I'm assuming there'll be a town meeting moment? Yes,
Yes,
yes, okay.
it's on the agenda for the town meeting, and we'll also have a meeting prior to the,
Your own meeting?
yes, prior to the
Look,
bond
And I-
vote.
I was gonna say, I think what we're also asking for is the go-ahead to plan on the May 7th special bond vote so that we can
It's
prepare.
it's
for
part of
that.
the
Yeah,
motion.
Okay.
And I did,
Right, okay.
Okay, are we ready for a motion? I'm going to make it. I move to approve the final version of schematic design, pricing, and scope of the Ilsley Library renovation expansion project, and authorize the town manager to prepare for a public special bond vote to be scheduled for May 7th, 2024 for the library renovation expansion project's capital funding.
Second.
questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
so you got your go-ahead. Just remember, that 8 million got to be in hand before we go forward.
Well, the pledges have to be in hands and they'll be paid out over 4 years.
That's what, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Right.
Commitment.
Legally binding pledges. They raised the temperature in here by
Well,
like
having 50 people
many, many
definitely,
degrees.
yeah, makes it toasty.
Hang on.
Oh.
Now we see how popular we really are.
Strawberries.
I know.
Do you want
It
some
was so
moss?
disappointing. I don't, but thank you. I appreciate the
I
offer.
like a
There's
little sugar to get me through.
You
half a
surprised me.
strawberry in there.
Yeah.
You absolutely took my knees out. That's, I'm gonna listen to that. I'm gonna listen to that recording over and over again.
Are you gonna fall asleep at night?
Just makes sense. Wow. Voters have got to approve.
Yeah.
And I think they will.
Yeah, it's still a big chunk,
You
but
cannot
it's
not
worth
approve
it.
of. That's,
Yeah,
it's a bargain.
yeah.
A $16 million building for a.
And I, you know, I like that it gets the other towns that do utilize that space to
Absolutely.
also
Yes. Yes.
help
Yes.
with
Yes.
something, you know?
But everyone came to this.
This is a regional. This is a regional asset.
Okay, hey guys,
Yeah, absolutely.
let's keep that.
All right.
That's a tough act to follow, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got Richard and Howard here tonight to give us the annual progress report.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm Richard Hopkins. I live in Middlebury. Howard Whitlitz is the chair of the Energy Committee. I'm the member that has been in charge of doing these annual reports. And Dan Rafferty, who's here too, has been my partner in putting these data together. Next year at this time, probably you'll be hearing from Dan rather than from me. I'm gradually going to phase out of this role. You know, when we started this process, I had suggested that we set a goal for the year 2027, which was, at the time we proposed it, was 8 years away. And some of you asked, why had I picked that year? And I said, because that's the year I'm going to turn 80. And I want to live to see us achieve this 80% reduction goal. We decided to move it back to the goal year, back to the year 2030. And I'll be 83 that year. I'm probably going to make it, but there's no guarantee. But I would very much like to live to see us achieve this 80% reduction in our CO2 emissions as that result from town activities. And I think we can do it. I think we will do it. But it won't happen unless we pay attention and keep our eyes on the ball. You've heard this evening two examples of challenges and opportunities that are related to achieving that goal. One is the idea that we will build a new library building and that we will build it right, and we won't be dependent on fossil fuels in the new library structure. And that's a great opportunity, and that will make a big difference to the amount of CO2 that we emit from town operations. There's a challenge. We're going to buy a Class 6 snowplow truck for $259,000, and it's not going to be electric. And we're probably a year or two too early to get a fully electric vehicle that can do what the town needs to have done. By the time it gets delivered 2 years from now, there will be more options. But of course, we will have been locked in to the decisions we made here today. We don't know what will be on the market 2 years from now, and we can't wait 4 years, to get a new truck. So this is a challenge to meeting these goals. So can I see the next slide, please? In just about 3 years ago, some of you and some other people who were the select board then adopted this goal. Be it resolved that the select board establishes the goal that emission of CO2 equivalent as a result of town operations be reduced by 80% compared to 2018-2019 in or before 2029-2030. That's the goal that you all adopted. Kathleen, can you go forward a couple of slides here? If you just, I want to show you the first graph. It's getting late in the evening, so I'm just going to skip a lot of this material. Okay. This is the bottom line. This is 5 data points. So we had 4 transitions in our emissions of CO2 from our operations. You can divide that graph into two parts. The first half is entirely due to Green Mountain Power shifting the sources of the electricity that they distribute in Vermont in the direction of more and more renewable and less CO2 in the mix of electricity that they deliver. So that reduction from almost 1,000 tons to about 600 tons from 2019 to 2021 is not due to anything we did. It is entirely due to Green Mountain Power cleaning up the power that they distribute to us. The second set of 2 years is after GMP had cleaned up their act. And, maybe you can see a downward trend there. Maybe you can see the effect of year-to-year variability in climate and in operations in various ways. The fiscal year 2021 concluded the COVID epidemic when use of vehicles went way down, and it's a little hard to be sure. So can you go back up to the top now? Just keep going. Stop. So for any entity that wants to reduce its CO2 production, there are three main strategies. And by any entity, I mean the United States or the state of Colorado or the town of Middlebury or the Middlebury town government. The overall strategies are still always going to be the same. We want to decarbonize the electricity. We want to electrify everything so that we're using the decarbonized electricity. And then we also want to reduce energy use where we can't yet fully decarbonize or can't yet electrify. And that's the sort of big picture strategy. So if we were following that strategy, giving the examples I gave before, the idea that we would build a new library building that had a ground source heat pump would be an example of electrify everything. Buying a new fossil fuel powered Class 6 truck is an example of not doing that. Not yet, anyway. Okay, so the next slide, please. Conservation and efficiency can be quick and they can be inexpensive, but you can't get to 80% reduction that way. We don't have a car that runs on gasoline that only uses 20% as much gasoline as our old cars. Okay, we can't get an 80% reduction while still use gasoline powered cars. We can't get, in most buildings, it'd be very unusual to be able to get an 80% reduction in energy use in a building through efficiency and conservation. You'd have to be in a really awful building in order for that to be able to do that. So you can't get to 80% reduction just by efficiency and conservation. It's also true that if we conserve low carbon electricity, that also doesn't get us very far because the electricity is already pretty much decarbonized. And so using less of it doesn't get us much reduction in overall CO2 production. So we really have to reduce our direct fossil fuel use if we want to get to an 80% reduction. So let's go on to the let's keep going. Can you find the first graph? This is the next graphic. Okay. Next one. So we have our energy use has been pretty much stable even while our CO2 production has gone down. And that, as I said, that's because GMP has cleaned up the power they deliver. The next slide. This is the energy use, not CO2 production, but energy use by apartment. And the wastewater treatment plant, labeled as sewer on here, is by far the biggest user of energy
Is
in
that
our town
UV?
operations.
Is that UV or drying?
It's the drying piece.
The drying piece.
UV is also electric, but that's true.
Yeah,
But
less energy.
yeah, it's the drying piece. You go back to that big shed that they have there, and they got these big drums, and they're heated electrically, and they work really well, but they use a lot of electricity. they don't, and so there are, there are the drive to redesign and rebuild the wastewater treatment plant is partly because of the expense of buying all that electricity. It's if you look at the next slide, this is by fuel type. So this is electricity, gasoline, diesel, heating oil, propane, natural gas. And the thing I want to say about this, it's not that each of these 6 pie pieces is more or less the same size. They're not all that different from each other. And if you want to get to an 80% reduction, you can't just attack one of them. You have to attack several of them in order to get to an 80% reduction. You can't just deal with just gasoline or just propane or just natural gas. You have to address, has to be a multifaceted approach. Next slide. So if we look at CO2 production by department, the sewer, instead of being almost half, the wastewater treatment plant is about 19% because the electricity that they use a lot of it, but it doesn't produce very much CO2. The next slide. So it's a little hard to see in the color scheme that's here. I just want to show you. This is here. This is the actual data that I showed you before, and this is this from here. The straight line is a projection. And that's what has to happen for us to get to 200 tons from the 1,000 tons that we started at initially. Fortunately, now we're starting at 600. We're not starting at 800. We're not starting at 1,000. So the slope doesn't have to be as steep as it would have had to be if GMP hadn't cleaned up their act orders. Next slide. This just reinforces that the upper left-hand graph is the same one you saw before, the first one I showed you. Then there's electricity, then natural gas, then gasoline and diesel together, and then fuel oil and propane together. And just drives home that the big reduction in those first couple of years is all from the electricity side. Onwards. Yeah, let's skip this one. So the good news is that we've had a 42% reduction in CO2 over a 4-year period. We're almost halfway to our goal with very little effort on our part so far. All the reduction so far is attributable to lower carbon GMP electricity. The annual use of the various fossil fuels is not obviously going down. It's not going up. It's, there's year-to-year variability, but it's not obviously going down either. Now, next slide. Next slide. So, Howard is going to talk to you a bit about things that town staff and you all have already done that are moving us in the right direction. And there are a lot of good things to talk about. We just have to keep our eye on the ball about looking for opportunities. Where can we convert from fossil fuels to electricity? Where can we do that? I'll just say what for light vehicles, cars, light trucks, and for building heat, for how to heat buildings, we already have existing technology that can get us where we need to go. Heavy vehicles, the big vehicles, the fire engines and the dump trucks is not where we're going to make progress in the short run. That's going to have to be a little further down the road. But Howard's going to talk to you all about what we've done so far.
Okay, yeah. Well, first, let me take the opportunity to thank Richard for, one, establishing this baseline back when it first started and the work that goes into it to maintain it every year. I mean, it's a lot of work. I know it seems overly simplified up there, but there's a lot of data, and he's our data guru. I also want to thank Dan for the support that he's provided and the willingness to assume this responsibility. But yeah, so that's important. I also want to acknowledge the effort the town has made in supporting the effort. As you'll see, there are a number of steps that have already been taken. I think we're all on the same page, And I think everyone wants to try to do the right thing. As you see from Richard's slides and the graphs, there's a lot more to be done. This isn't going to get us if we continue at the rate we're going. But hopefully the technology will catch up and it'll help get us there. But in terms of steps we've already taken, in terms of thermal, the police building, I don't know if you remember, there was the conference room was tightened up. They couldn't even have meetings in there in the wintertime because it was so leaky. And the Energy Committee contributed some funds towards that. The other is the teens had actually there was a smart thermostat that was put in there that had a significant impact just from that little low cost item. There is hopes. I mean, I don't know where that stands currently, but my understanding is that it's supposedly moving forward, the teen center weatherization, and we will contribute funds towards that as well. And then this next one's a little dated with the heat pumps in the library. Now that's geothermal.
Geothermal.
All the better, right?
Yeah.
Those are still heat pumps.
Well, it's ground source. Yeah, ground source. Yeah. I guess that counts. And then in terms of the vehicles, a big step was the willingness at the time, Bill Vernon, to use biodiesel, to experiment with that. And with the success of that, it was expanded from a B5 to a B20, which is the mix, how much of it is biodiesel. Unfortunately, it's only good for vehicles that are not under warranty. And because with the purchases of new vehicles, we have fewer vehicles that are no longer under warranty. So I'm not sure we're going to see a great benefit there in the near future. And then also the recent purchase of the 2 EVs. So that's good. I mean, that's heading in the right direction.
We see the next slide.
Yeah, the next slide, yeah. And I know Chief Hanley at the time had experimented with the hybrid vehicles, and I guess that wasn't a totally successful experiment there. And then again with the electric mower, but the thought is there, right? Where everyone's starting to think in terms of how can we reduce the carbon of the town. And then in terms of renewable, even though, as Richard pointed out, by using renewable energy, it's not going to have a significant impact because GMP, as it is now, is a pretty low carbon source. But one opportunity is maybe with savings that the renewable energy provides, the solar projects, there could be savings that could be reapplied towards other things that would help reduce the carbon. And then I know, I guess telling consultants, we're still looking at putting solar on the town office building.
And the proposed hydro on the north side of the falls.
And right, yeah, that's right. That didn't make the charts
500
there,
kilowatts there.
which is pretty significant. So all that will help. So yeah, if you want to do the next slide, I don't know if you want to do the closing or not, but you just restating what we're here for and what we're reporting on is.
Yeah. So this slide presentation and a text document that has all the same data and some explanations are both in your packet. So, those are available to you and anybody else that wants to download them from the town website.
And I would just thank you for you guys' work as an energy committee. I was probably a naysayer when we talked about this goal. I thought it was unrealistic. I still would tell you, we have made a strong commitment to trying to do sustainable practices, as you can see, and work towards making changes that made good quality, good sense and that moved us forward both with sustainability and reasonable investments. Richard, I hear you on the fire engines and stuff. I think we're a long way. I hope that other alternative fuels are a lot better than what the electric is turning out on just the weight of batteries you would need for running those. And then if you watched what happened in Chicago recently, I don't want to debate you and prolong this, but I think that there are areas that we'll have to look for other solutions. And I encourage you to get your whole community to push for other alternative sources of power. Because I'm in the heavy equipment industry, and there's some great things coming out, and you know who buys them? Cities who have a lot of money and citizens pushing for it, because they just don't, those batteries don't work very long. And so you're not very productive. And so I don't think we're going to get 80%. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, you're as aware as anybody of how dynamic the market is, and how, I mean, 3 years ago when we proposed this goal, the array of available technologies for building heat and for vehicles was far less rich and far less varied than it is now. And 3 or 4 years from now, it's going to be even wider. You're right that we do need some technological breakthroughs. We need to be able to charge vehicle batteries more quickly than we can do now, without damaging the batteries. That was one of the objections, one of the very realistic objections from the Department of Public Works staff to having to being dependent on an electric snowplow vehicle, which is that it sometimes needs to be available for 24 hours at a time, and you can't have 6 hours of downtime to charge the battery, and that's perfectly understandable. So, I don't know what the technological breakthroughs are going to be. Batteries will be lighter, and they will charge faster 3 years from now than they do now.
And which is why I say, 80% by 2030. We might want to be. We don't have time to talk about it tonight, but rather than, I think we need to just, it's like I have the issue with us trying to hold ourselves accountable to a goal that we know we can't make. I know we can't make it in my heart. And if you believe that we can make it, God bless you, because I think you'll be severely disappointed.
Well, when the target was made, when the goal was put forth, it was aspirational. We didn't know at the time whether or not we would get there. But you look at the market today, there are multiple companies now experimenting with Class 6 electric vehicles, and this is 2024. Who knows?
Also, one's dropping their electric vehicles, right?
Yeah. But
so
I hear you, but I still think this is a goal that we want to push towards, because if we don't, we might not get to 80%, but maybe we'll get to 65. And that's I think we need to do everything we can to try at least.
I was just encouraging us to find an attainable goal.
Understood. Yeah.
So I'm going to repeat myself here. I'm sorry about that, but for building heat, we have available technologies right now. Any building can be heated with heat.
We're working that way, Richard. But
and for light vehicles, we have, depending on the exact use to which they're going to be put, we have good solutions for light vehicles. And if we do everything we can with buildings and everything we can with light vehicles, we will get pretty close to 80%, if not all the way there. We're gonna have a 7-year-old fire engine and a 6-year-old class 6 diesel truck in our garages, on December 31st, 2030, and that's and that's why we're not going to be at 100%. Hopefully, we'll be at 80%.
Guess time will tell, right?
Yeah.
Be interesting to see where it all goes.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we got Mike. We skipped over the one ahead of you because they've asked to be deferred.
All right. Hello, my name is Michael McAuliffe. I'm president of Friends of Middlebury Hockey, and I've served in that role for the past 7 years. The last time I was here was 2019, when the select board approved a request from Friends to extend a loan that we had taken out to expand Memorial Sports Center. by an additional 5 years, and to take out a new loan for $100,000 that would be paid out over a 15-year span, so that we could finish that expansion project and open the second floor of the building, so that we could provide a heated viewing area, indoor restrooms to spectators, and a meeting space for folks coming into the building. The select board approved that request, and it went on to town meeting day and was approved by the voters. We've successfully opened that space, and it's been operating for the past 3 years. And the number of compliments we've received from folks throughout the region coming in to enjoy that new space has been remarkable. I've been spending quite a bit of time in the building this past year, and every weekend, folks who haven't been in come in and they're amazed by what we've accomplished. So thank you for that support back in 2019. When we moved forward with that project, like I said, the select board agreed to extend the initial loan by 5 years. Let us take out a new one. When that was written up for the warning, the new loan was phrased in the warning as being a 5-year loan with a balloon payment after 5 years. And when Kathleen and I caught that, it had already been warned, so there was an opportunity to change the wording to what the select board had approved before town meeting day. So I'm here today to ask the select board's approval to renew that loan, to restore the 15-year time span that had originally been approved.
This is for 10 more years.
Yep. No new money. It's already committed. It just gives us more time to continue paying off that debt.
Which was always the intent.
Yes. And just for historical perspective, that original expansion loan originated in 2008 for an amount of $700,000. Friends of Middlebury Hockey has been successfully paying that down, and the remaining amount on that loan is $298,000. So we've paid a considerable amount on that original debt. And then on the additional loan that was taken out for $100,000, we've paid that down by $30,000. So we are making considerable progress on those debts.
Great.
Thank you.
I talked to Heather yesterday, and she told me how many people are signed up for Intro to Hockey on the girls' side. Also very impressive.
Yes. Things working with the town to keep our payments on these debts affordable is one of the reasons why Friends of Middlebury Hockey can partner with Middlebury Amateur Hockey Association to do things like the Girls Learn to Play event this past weekend. Friends of Middlebury Hockey donated the ice time to Middlebury Amateur Hockey Association, helped publicize the event, and we had 43 girls who had never played hockey before in the building for the first time. And all of the members of the girls' high school team volunteered to be assistant coaches on the ice. We had players who came up through the Middlebury program who are now in college and in prep school who volunteered their time to come out onto the ice to work with those girls. And then I was up there for the duration, and Friends of Middlebury Hockey donated, in addition to the ice time, bags of popcorn and cups of hot chocolate to all the girls who volunteered. So
Great.
Questions? Pleasure of the board.
I move that the select board vote to adopt the proposed resolution, sign the proposed capital improvement note, and authorize the town treasurer to sign the non-arbitrage certificate to borrow the sum of $71,000 from the National Bank of Middlebury for the purpose of financing the cost of public building improvements for the Memorial Sports Center as originally authorized on March 5th, 2019 annual meeting of the town of Middlebury and extended by the select board on February 13th, 2024.
Questions?
Let's go.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roller hockey, is it ever going to be a thing? Can we make
I
roller
wish.
hockey happen?
That's how I made my entry into the hockey world.
Yeah.
I played
I
college.
have a lot of skaters at the
Mhm.
teen center.
Yeah?
Like rollerblade or roller skates, but they have nowhere to go.
That's how I started. I grew up in Texas.
Mhm.
And so ice hockey at that time wasn't an option.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So I played collegiate club roller hockey
Mhm.
for a few years and was on the board for the National Collegiate Roller Hockey Association, which governs collegiate club roller hockey nationwide.
Mhm.
I love the sport.
Mhm.
My knees can't handle inline hockey anymore, but I love it. It would be a fantastic option for Memorial Sports Center if we had a partner to help with the initial cost of inline hockey flooring.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because it is
Put down different surfaces.
What-
it's a significant investment to procure the floor.
Yeah.
The great thing is most of those floors can be multi-use floors.
Yeah.
So once you get it in,
Yeah.
Camp Cucamonga could still come in with the rec department in the summertime. We would have no issues hosting things like graduation ceremonies, other public events, because the building is designed to be more than just hockey.
Yeah.
Inline would be a perfect fit. It's just that initial cost.
What do you know? What the cost? I'm assuming.
A new the last time I priced out a brand new floor for a space the size of Memorial. I think it would have been in the ballpark of $30,000 to $35,000.
Okay.
So, which in the context of
Not the scariest number I've ever
a
heard.
library
That
renovation.
is not the scariest number I've ever heard.
Okay.
I feel like
Yeah.
there's a grant for that.
But for our humble little nonprofit, when we're already carrying existing
Sure.
debt,
Oh, understood.
we'll need to be conservative.
Mhm. Right.
Or have a big donor.
We'd have more on the agenda tonight. so-
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
We could
Thank
talk
you.
hockey all night.
Oh,
Yes.
if
Let me know when
only.
you'd like me back.
Bruins. Go Bruins.
Thank you.
Go Habs.
My son played roller hockey
Oh, are you really?
for a year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Great
had-
ice hockey.
We had a team in
We can get into
my
it.
dinky town in Georgia. It was mostly just my
Celtics
friends.
Really doing well. Dave.
Hello, gang. Thought that big crowd was here for me.
Yeah, you thought
Oh,
wrong,
man.
buddy.
Alrighty, so I'll try to be efficient about this. So at the last time I came up here, you had asked for some sort of regular update. Just tell you guys what the committee's working on and what's coming down the pike, so no one's surprised. And so included in the packet was a one-page update that's in there if you'd like to open it. And I'll walk through it quickly, and then any questions you have. And these are essentially Andy and Izzy are on that committee with. Is John still here? No, but John's here earlier, and John's on that committee. And we'll briefly just summarize what we're working on. So you had approved a committee working on a policy for this town, which is not uncommon in many places, which is how you name public spaces. This town doesn't, in the past, I think has had more of an informal process for that, but naming parks, naming roads, naming buildings is a common thing that happens in towns as a way to honor people. But how you do that is a process you may want to write down. So we took a look at a number of communities and across smaller towns across the country, and not surprisingly, they were very similar in their structure. We had a great conversation in our last meeting that Andy and everyone were able to give feedback on, and we have a draft that we'll be bringing to the committee next week, next week. And hopefully that will then come for you guys to consider. You'd be amazed how many little things need to be discussed. You know, do you name things after people who are still living? Do you wait till they've passed away? How long do you wait? Things like that. So it's not hopefully not the most controversial thing in the world, but good to have in place. There had been a topic raised about the efficiency of our the noise ordinance exception and our public assemblage permits, and whether any efficiency could be gained in merging the two in some way. So in a conversation with Crystal in our office upstairs, in this town, there aren't too many people seeking to both use the public spaces and have big events late at night. Those don't overlap too often, with the exception of the college, who comes in every year and gets a blanket permit. So there's just not really much efficiency to be gained. I think it's 1 or 2 applicants a year who actually are seeking both. So our recommendation for that is we're not going to bring anything to the select board to consider. It's just not really worth the effort there. Regulating short-term rental units. This is a topic I'm sure you've all heard about across the state. Nothing It's not unique that we're discussing. Towns around the country, frankly, are talking about it. There's plenty of media coverage. So this was from, I think, our first or second meeting, maybe before the new year. And I provided some research to the group, and you can see that that memo is out there on the policy committee's portion of the website. This issue is hitting towns differently across the state. If you're in Burlington, or if you're in some of the ski towns or the municipalities adjacent to those ski towns, the percentage of their housing stock that is shifting towards short-term rental units is meaningful, and it's an upward trend, and I can appreciate the concerns. And there's a lot of towns that are responding and developing ordinances and laws, and some of them are more strict than others. Some of them are kind of just oversight. Here in Middlebury, the numbers are very low percentage-wise, and there's no real upward trend from the numbers that the state has available. So, it's not to say that in the future the town, you can consider it now if you'd like. You're the select board. But this is not essentially a growing issue in Middlebury. It's about, at least according to the state numbers, 80 or 90 units around the town. We're just not up. We're not a ski town. We're not Burlington. We're not seeing that same dramatic trend in units shifting over to short-term rental in the way that I think it was Dover, Vermont, that somebody sent me an article, and their numbers are just through the roof. And understandably, those towns are the ones who often are taking a more dramatic step forward in regulating them.
We did discover that 3 members of the policy review committee have short-term rental units.
Yeah, sounds like a high percentage of the town.
Small town, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some towns do nothing more than simply they just want to know where they are for fire safety purposes and public safety in general, because people are moving in and out. Other towns have taken approaches of restricting them, the numbers or who has to live nearby in order to have one. If you've read about the Burlington activity on it. So it runs the gamut, what towns are trying to do regarding that topic.
I'm not sure the data supports that that's the issue, because a lot of them are ones that were owned anyways. It's just the platform now allows people, when they're not using them, to offer them out for income and short-term rental.
Well, from my background, where I was at, our industry found out that the largest growth of short-term rentals was by investment groups buying up houses and turning them over into full-time Airbnb.
Middlebury?
No, but throughout the country.
Oh, throughout the country. We're talking Middlebury.
Yes.
I don't think we see that here.
Well, we do
have
it.
The one guy who did it, but he's renting them to college students. It wasn't
But that's
short-term
different.
rental.
Yeah, that's different. But I think overall there's over 6,000 units in the state. Is that right?
I have the percentage here. I don't have the raw number. It was 3% of the housing units in the state.
That's significant when it comes to the state that needs housing.
And
I mean, it's different than vacation homes and
The
stuff.
question
It's just-
is whether are they vacation? Are a lot of those vacation homes or part-time homes that are being rented? Like I'm doing it with my summer home.
It's your summer home. That's different. That's different.
Yeah, no, but I would have never done it. if
There's a
it wasn't
duplex.
for-
There's a duplex right next to the Congregational Church. It's rented out as full time as an Airbnb, and it's a small little apartment that would probably rent out for into a real affordable group.
Right.
And even one unit is a loss of a unit is serious.
Yeah, but is it worth all of our effort if it's only?
That's
we
what I
need
know.
to build more houses. What we need to do.
Right. Well,
you also have to ask, what is each town's capacity to implement? It's one thing to oversee and do you want to start registering them? Do you want them to have some sort of annual fee? Do you want them inspected? What can your town actually do?
And I think we should also wait for the legal landscape to settle. So we're not.
And there's also state activity on this front. I know there's been discussions about possible activities that would cover us if something made it through Montpelier. So it's not to say the issue doesn't have importance, but I think everyone in the room knows there's many issues impacting the housing crisis, and I think at least here in Middlebury, it's not the same driver that it is elsewhere. So I think the recommendation from the group was at this time to not suggest some sort of step forward, but it's out there for further discussion. So, so I'll wrap up. The last thing was a topic you had assigned to us. It came, I think, Kathleen, we got a couple of communications about this one. The placement of religious symbols and objects on public property. We drafted something initially that we first going to give to our town attorney. As you can imagine, this is the kind of thing where there's a lot of case law involved. So we don't want to spend anybody's time before we have a chance for the town attorney to inform us about what is the case law around the country on this particular issue. But the idea would be we find some written structure so that we can guide these requests in the future that's compliant with the law to the extent we get them. And again, there are other communities that have drafted these. So the last bit is something we've been working with our chief on. And that is, as you know, in your budget, you've got funding approved for the possible purchase of security cameras in the public space in this town. Especially in recent, I guess, years and decades, the public awareness of the cameras and interest in how they're used and all that has grown. And in line with that, we thought, in anticipation of whatever you guys may decide to do with that funding, it'd be good to have something written down that explains how they're accessed and how they're used and who's making the decisions about where they go. So we have a draft that the chief has looked at and given comments on, and we will eventually be bringing it to the committee and then hopefully here. So that if you do something, there's something in writing that will govern how these cameras are operated. Because right now, I think we have cameras in the police station and we have them around this facility, but this is not a town that has them on the streets, so to speak, at this point. So that's not quite as short as I hoped, but a summary of what the committee's working on.
Some good topics.
Ideas?
Those are important things that we've been wrestling with. So,
and I think they provide, things like this. They provide structure and guidance down the road. Some of them are a little more academic than others, but some they'll give you a pathway when these issues do come up.
It's a good group. It's a really interesting discussion.
Oh, you
folks in the
got
room.
a good group.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
I can tell they enjoy the dialogue and fun to talk about.
More power to you.
All right.
Dialogue.
No problem.
So
You're a short time with that.
our next meeting was scheduled for the 25th, which is a Tuesday of the Addison County School District's 27th, which is the Tuesday scheduled for Addison County School District's annual meeting. We've typically moved away from their meeting nights so that board members could attend. I would propose that we meet the night of the 29th, which is that Thursday, if that works for everyone.
I am returning from DC on Thursday. I'm not sure
I
if I'm
won't
able
be
to make
here
that.
either of those nights, so, and probably won't be able to call in.
Where are you going?
South America.
Oh, yeah.
That's a tougher one.
It's the same time zone, so.
So I have
So I was-
yes for Farhad, yes for Brian, and yes for Isabel.
It's actually the West Coast.
So we have three. We need one more that, Lindsay, could you commit to that? So we
Yeah,
have a
I can
quorum?
be here. I can be here. The 29th?
29.
If I have time, I'll zoom in, but I don't think so.
I think I'm between there and here.
You gonna zoom in from a beach somewhere?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. Because I was
It'll
gonna
be
say,
the
don't
mountains.
bother.
No.
Okay, so we'll move it to the 29th. And then we go to check warrants.
Yeah. I reviewed the check warrants yesterday at lunchtime, and I moved to approve total expenditures in the amount of $812,414.19, consisting of $520,844.21 for accounts payable and $291,569.98 for payroll for the period January 23rd, 2024 through February 13th, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, select board member concerns. Dan?
The only thing is I'm excited about the revelation that you've made and the commitment that you've
We
given to
still
us.
have to talk about it and agree on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
That's an option.
No, I think it's a fabulous option. So, other than that, I'm good.
Lindsay?
No, nothing for me.
I had some things I've forgotten.
Gotta write them down.
So we have need for a couple executive sessions. Because there will be actions, we will hold them separately, come out, take action on our executive session, and go back into the executive session. The first one is a probable litigation item. And I would
Yeah.
solicit
I move that the council find premature general public knowledge regarding probable litigation to which the town would be a party would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage because the discussion will divulge the town's strategy in such probable litigation.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. I move to enter into executive session with the inclusion of the town manager to discuss probable litigation as allowed under Title I, Section 313A1E.
The
Second.
assistant town manager? Can we add the assistant town manager?
And the assistant town manager, yes, absolutely, and the assistant town manager. Sorry, David.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Turn off the recorder.
going offline.
Oh.